Che profumino. Lo sai, Guido? Oh, questo venuto nero ero convinta che si sgolcisse.
Ah, sì?
Invece
Bene,
niente,
bene.
neanche una piegolina. Pensa, dopo 3 ore di viaggio. Però non mi hai nemmeno detto se ti piaceva.
A particular aspect of Fellini's creativity is his ability to invent words and innovate language. Early in his career, he coined the word vitelloni for the title of a film, which referred to a group of people dedicated to idleness. In his previous film to 8½, La Dolce Vita, he coined the term paparazzi to describe annoying photographers who chase after famous people. In 8½, Fellini reached a pinnacle of this skill. In one scene in the movie, Guido calls himself an old snaporaz, a word that apparently means nothing, but may be related to the dialect term meaning poor man. Guido's lover, an avid comic book reader, intersperses her phrases with a large number of onomatopoeias like sculp or spang. But most notably, in one of the crucial episodes of the film, The Magician's Scene, the word asa nisi masa appears. It derives from a children's game in which words are distorted by adding an extra syllable to each vowel. The word on which the distortion is based, anima, is perhaps not coincidental. In the film, The Magician's Scene is followed by a flashback in which the protagonist discovers the origin of this word in a childhood episode of Guido's life.
Guido, dove indumi stanotte? È la notte che ritratti i moviocci. Non avrei mica paura, ma bisogna stare zitto. E il dottor Giustine guarderà scioci in un angolo e lei sarà tesoro. Coraggio, Guido, che diventerà il ritmo e te. Che ti ricordi la parola? Asa, nisi, masa. Asa, nisi, masa. Asa, nisi, masa.
There is another very important film in the history of world cinema in which a word from childhood constitutes the pivot of the entire story. This is obviously the word rosebud in Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. Rosebud is the word that inaugurates the career of the character of Citizen Kane, so to speak, marking his desire to live, and it is also the word with which he ends his life. The first word and also the last. Witnesses have sometimes recalled the last words spoken on their deathbed by some great figures such as Goethe's expression, more light, or Mahler's diminutive Mozartl on his deathbed. What do these last words mean? Many of them carry their enigma to the grave with those who uttered them. In the case of Rosebud in the film Citizen Kane, the word simply refers to an object that no one notices, a sled that had belonged to the protagonist as a child and ends up being burned in a furnace at the film's conclusion. The greatest master in the creative and inventive use of language is likely James Joyce. In his work, Finnegan's Wake, the writer creates 10 words of 100 letters, each called thunder words. It is impossible to offer an exhaustive interpretation of the meaning of these words. They contain a large number of meanings and are open to the reader's interpretation.
The
so-called container words or portmanteau words are also a characteristic of Lewis Carroll's writing. Words that contain more than one meaning or are completely devoid of sense. When Alice questions Humpty Dumpty about the meaning of what he says, he gives a clear explanation saying that the problem isn't what it means. The problem is, who is the master? When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in rather a scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master, that's all. The master of what, we might wonder? Perhaps the master of that very limited area, if viewed from the outside, which is the area of the child's play, that area where the child with their small plastic animals, toy soldiers, dolls, and constructions, invents a special language that is spoken in the small world that arises like a soap bubble in the space and time of play, only to vanish. This small space where the word creator is the master could also be the artist's space, the area of the canvas on which they paint, the block of material they shape, or in the case of a filmmaker, the rectangle of the screen. Access to this type of creative and private space can be granted by a magical word, such as supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, the word that in Mary Poppins allows entry into the world created on the pavement with the colored chalks by her artist friend.
Right. It's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. If you say it loud enough, you'll always sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Perhaps it is precisely in the aim of ensuring access to a new world that the artistic literary avant-garde of the 20th century considered it necessary to attack the semantic character of language. The visual arts have upset the figurative character of images, and even in literature, they have created phenomena such as Dadaist poetry, where sounds completely replace the meaning of words.
Caravane. L'olifanto bambla, oh, falibambla, crossica, fa, habla, horem, equica goram, higo, bloico, russula, huiu.
Even in contemporary music, in works such as Aventures and Nouvelle Aventures by Gheorghe Ligeti, one can see on stage singing actors who ignore conventional semantics, creating a dramaturgy made up of sounds, gestures, and mimicry. Regarding comics, within the narrative universe of DC Comics, there is a character named Onomatopoeia, who often accompanies his evil actions with sounds described just as they appear in comic books. Anticipating the avant-garde of the 20th century, the writer Lautréamont, author of Les Chants de Maldoror, had the idea in his writing, surreal before surrealism, of associating incongruous meanings and incompatible objects, thus creating contents that are difficult to interpret and forcing the reader to question themselves and perceive something they could not perceive before. He is as handsome as the retractility of the claws in Birds of Prey, or again, as the unpredictability of muscular movement in sores in the soft spot of the posterior cervical region, or rather, as the perpetual motion rat trap which is always reset by the trapped animal and which can go on catching rodents indefinitely and works even when it is hidden under straw, and above all, as the chance juxtaposition of a sewing machine and an umbrella on a dissecting table. What is the difference between inventing new associations of objects and new associations of words, in literature and in visual arts, for example, in surrealism? What is the difference between creating new words and creating new objects? If there is a period in life where the passion for neologisms is particularly dominant, it is surely that of childhood, in that moment when the child, learning to speak, experiments with the plasticity of language. Assa nisi massa, the word invented by Fellini, is evidence or Fellini's own confession that the roots of his creativity lie precisely in that childhood experimentation with language that emerges from the child's mouth when spoken.